Hello there and welcome to another edition of The Big Q. Today we will be talking about the civil society platform and what it does for the country. And that's why I'm joined by the Executive Secretary of the platform, John Bosco Nyemazi. Thank you very much for making time to be with us and welcome to the show, John.
Thank you for having me.
Most of the people tend to confuse the civil society organizations with the private sector federation, and other organizations. How different are you and what is the civil society organization? What do you stand for?
Civil society organizations is an aggregate of non-governmental organizations that have specific interests they are serving, specifically serving the interests of the citizens, but also advocating for them. So civil society occupies an important position in the development dialogue, as it provides opportunities to bring members of the communities together to articulate their demands and concerns. And actually, civil society also plays a significant role in the solution making, in policy advocacy and development efforts. So civil society's role is mainly, it plays an advocate role, raising awareness to the societal needs and also advocating for change in relation to the issues that are affecting the citizens. And of course, mainly part of it is civic engagement, the role of citizens in policy making, how citizens are they empowered, actually to be part of addressing the issues that are affecting the community. Civil society also plays another important role of service provision. It delivers services in a number of areas, in education, in health, food and security, disaster management, preparedness and response. Not only service delivery, but also an expert role. Civil society has a unique role, unique experience, knowledge to shape policy and strategy. And when you are talking about development, does the development is inclusive, but also, defining standards. As civil society, also look at promoting fundamental and universal human rights, values, and principles. So, mainly, the role of civil society is independent from government and business, but definitely it has a complementary role in achieving a wider development targets, be national targets, international commitments. So the civil society's role is really huge, and it is really citizen-centered. You see, there is government, there is private sector, there is civil society, there is you guys, the media. So we all, our common denominator is the citizen. So whatever we are doing, we are a non-profit making institutions, but we look at the interests of the citizens.
So basically what you're trying to say is that you're the watchdog of the citizens.
Yes.
So you tend to watch what the government does.
Yes.
And I think this is where the misconception, if I should put it that way, or it could not be a misconception, maybe in your opinion, where people say the civil society normally goes head to head with the government. Is that true?
I don't think, in most cases, when you look around in the region and beyond the region, and the evolution of the civil society and why actually civil society came into place, it's not actually to be at loggerheads with the government and always fight, but how do we find a common cause and how can we complementary work towards achieving certain goals and development targets. So yes, it is possible that we might have different views, yes, but I don't think it shouldn't be really, we play a watchdog role in terms of promoting transparency and accountability, holding institutions accountable, including civil society ourselves, because you can't talk about transparency and accountability and holding others accountable without looking at yourself. And from that perspective, and I think we have been doing that watchdog role in terms, for instance, things to do with the fight of corruption. We know this is a government's target to ensure that we have zero corruption and zero tolerance to corruption. And we have had, for instance, in our civil society, some efforts to, to fight against corruption. For instance, when you look at what Transparency International Rwanda has been doing, every year publishing Rwanda Bribery Index that ranks different institutions in a way they are fighting corruption and where the corruption cases and actually suggesting practical recommendations. We've been engaging, on various interventions. For instance, have seen the parliament makes the laws, and during the draft laws, we have had good partnership with the parliament where they engage us in draft laws to give our inputs and our recommendations. But of course, we are doing that as civil society, looking at the needs of the people and how that law really addresses some of the issues that are affecting the community. Also, for instance, as you might be aware, the Ministry of Local Government and LODA, in partnership with other stakeholders, they have been reviewing the categories. And they have involved us, and we have been able to reach out to citizens in districts, collecting their views, be able to analyze those views, interpret them. We have organized national hearings to hear from all civil society organization members.
In different districts or Kigali only?
No, different districts. We reached different districts of Rwanda. And of course, from a coordination perspective, that is Rwanda Civil Society Platform, bringing all together our members, carrying out research, and we have been able to submit civil society views, but of course from the citizens, that this is how we think the categories should be. Also, let's take an example of the government is now implementing national strategy for transformation. In the process, civil society, the platform as an apex, as a coordination body for civil society organizations. By the way, we are composed of 9 umbrella organizations, of which umbrellas, they have specific interventions. And umbrella has also their member organizations. So that formation, that grouping is based, yes, is based on specific areas of interventions. Let's take an example. CSOs is one of our members that has around 43 members. And it coordinates efforts to do with agriculture and community development, and carrying out advocacy in that related sphere. We have Pro-Family Twese Hamwe that contribute to the efforts of women empowerment, gender promotion, and of course it coordinates around 53 members. We also have RRP+. RRP+ is an umbrella of people living with HIV and AIDS. So their efforts, they coordinate efforts to do with HIV prevention, treatment and supporting the HIV-infected persons, ensure that they are getting, there is no stigma in the community. How can they work? How can they support the interests of their members? They have around 16 NGOs, part of it, 500 associations, 300 cooperatives across the country. You see, this is a very big, very big group. We also have CLADO. CLADO is an umbrella of human rights organizations. They defend rights of the people, economic governance. This is where they have around 12 members. And they have been doing efforts to do advocacy on budget, planning and budgeting, in ensuring that how this planning, this budgeting is inclusive and reflects the needs of the people. We have been carrying out pre-budget hearings during the planning process. And on top of that, they provide recommendations to the districts where those pre-budget hearings have taken place, and of course inform Minicofin as the coordinating ministry, as well as the parliament. And of course, in partnership with the platform and CLADO, we also been carrying out analysis of budget framework paper. And this budget framework paper, we analyze where the most budget is going to be allocated. And also, as we analyze, we look at the needs of the people, and when we are meeting the citizens, the issues they talk about. And by the way, the parliament gives us a slot to come and present the findings from the analysis of the budget framework paper with practical recommendations that in this, for instance, in agriculture, you say that this is where you need to allocate this budget. This is our recommendation. We also, I'm talking about our members, we also have NUDOL. NUDOL is an umbrella of people living with disabilities, and have around 15 members, and trying to promote the interests of the people living with disabilities, the rights. For example, they have been playing a fundamental role in the employment policy, in ensuring that if employment is being given to people, do we also consider the people living with disabilities? In terms of infrastructures, the complexes, the buildings, are they inclusive in terms of like the accessibility of people with disability? Also, we have RIOF. RIOF is Rwanda Youth Organization Forum, that has youth organizations, of course, that does through the participation of youth in the policy making, in sports activities, in justice. So that's what RIOF stands for, bring together all those members. And also in environment, we have an umbrella that intervenes in environment, that has around 13 members. Things to do with climate change, environment, and recently, by the way, we have had discussions and consultations with the Ministry of Environment, and that was about the Paris Agreement, which Rwanda signed and ratified. So, and every country has national determined contributions. So what is the role of civil society? We have been able to bring together all our members in the sector, giving our contributions, but complementing the government on the efforts to actually achieve the country commitments in the Paris Agreement.
Yes, but maybe before we continue, I just have this question in mind. As a platform then, do you push these particular subsidiaries, if I should call them that way? You know, an umbrella organization, you've mentioned CLAD, you've mentioned so many members that are part of the platform, but I'm wondering as a platform, do you push them to deliver better? Because I'm looking at a sense where we are moving to 2020, yet we still have issues that we have not met. Yet I believe if you push some of these, you know, subsidiaries would be able to achieve them. Is that the case?
Oh, yes. From a coordination perspective, because for us, we are coordinating the members and have that representation role, but also pushing our members does with our role of providing capacities to our members, providing capacities in policy advocacy, in service delivery. We have talked about national strategy for transformation, which actually platform and its members, mainly CLADO, but bringing all our members together, we collected the views and inputs. Then we submitted the civil society dockets to the Ministry of Finance that this is what we wish and recommend that should be put in National Strategy for Transformation. And we can actually proudly say that out of the views that were given by civil society, 74% of the views were considered in NST1. Also have these international commitments. Let's talk about SDGs.
Before we go to that, maybe we take a short break. Then when we come back, you tell us some of the commitments that you're trying to do through international bodies and what your role is, especially when it comes to such international views, say the SDGs, and others, right? We take a short break, but when we come back, we're still talking to the Executive Secretary of the Rwanda Civil Society Platform, John Bosco Nyemazi. And of course, when we come back, he will dive into details of some of the challenges they face, achievements, and their contribution as a whole. Do keep it the Big Q. Welcome back, and thank you very much for keeping it the Big Q. We are still talking to John Bosco Nyemazi, who is the Executive Secretary of the Rwanda Civil Society Platform. Before we went for a break, of course, he was telling us some of the roles or some of the members of his platform and what they're doing in their various capacities to ensure that no one is left behind towards the development of the nation. With all this, Bosco, I'm wondering, where do you get your funding? Who funds you? Because I'm sure all this needs some money at some point.
Yes, our funding definitely goes with the mandate we are serving. As we said, a platform has many members, close to 1,448. And we have specific interventions in human rights, in development, in service delivery. So our funding, we get funding from different partners, including international NGOs, development partners, and their funding, of course, is based on thematic areas. Thematic areas, we talk about environment, we talk about health, we talk about, governance and many areas. So the funding we get, in most cases, these development partners and INGOs put out call for proposals, encouraging civil society members to participate. They apply. Then after shortlisting, based on their evaluation rubrics, then you're able to generate funding. And in most of our donors, you see, INGOs, in most cases, they also get funding from development partners. They also give this funding to civil society organizations. So we have, for instance, the one UN system, that is UNDP, UNICEF, UNFPA, SIDA, DFID, among European Union, among others. So that funding is channeled. Some give direct to members of the civil society, others through the international NGOs. So they give that funding program-based funding. Then we are able to implement such initiatives based on the mandate we are serving. And when you look at the interventions, actually, of civil society, by the way, civil society's work has not just started now, has been on since, actually, after 1994 genocide perpetrated against the Tutsi. Civil society has been engaged in development and reconstruction of the country through service delivery, mainly in agriculture, development, microcredit. Like we take an example of Umutanguha and Duterimbere. They started as microcredits, but when the policy of microfinance came, they became microfinance institutions that are serving a big segment of the community. Also in human rights awareness, women's rights, people living with disability, children's rights, but also trauma and healing. So we have psychosocial counselors in our civil society organizations, in peace building initiatives, but also in transformation that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
So civil society has been in various interventions that are complementary to the government targets, like international targets we've been talking about of SDGs, carrying out during the formulation of the policies, implementation, but also monitoring. So in monitoring, then we are able to advocate where we see gaps and give practical recommendations.
But I'm coming from a point of still back to the funding, you know. When you say that you have international NGOs that probably fund you in one way or another, I'm looking into the factor of external interferences. Doesn't this happen, or does it happen? Because I'm thinking the hand that feeds you is the hand that controls you.
I think civil society, definitely, we have our specific mandates according to the grouping I was talking about and formation. But in most cases, you find the funder has specific interests. Of course, if the specific mandate that he has doesn't fall within your mandate, then you are not going to work with that person. But I think there have been checks and balance. Of course, we really need to look at the matters that are affecting our country. So when it comes to interference, of course, interference has been there, but it is up to us as the civil society to see we really serving the Rwandans or serving specific interests. So we try to show them, and we have seen instances where an organization has been serving in this specific area.
Yes.
But because of the funding,
they changed the thematic
they change. And of course, that's an issue. So I think when you look at UN General Assembly of 2015 that actually adopted SDGs, was to put emphasis to local actors. And there is also this Grand Bargain Agreement that most countries have signed, that instead of putting much emphasis into international NGOs that actually say that they are providing capacities to local actors, yes, let them go to capacity building, but funding should go to local actors who actually understand the context.
Who is you now?
Who
the
is
civil
us?
society? Yes.
But there have been challenges, actually. There have been challenges to do, like the commitment on that was by 2020, we should have achieved 25% of the funding going to local actors. But now, as we talk, in 2019, it is 2%. And I think this is an advocacy we need to continue doing to see, are we doing the right thing in terms of giving the capacity local actors to implement their mandate and actually helping them to achieve that.
The Rwanda governance scorecard still sees a decrease in human development over the years, but yet we are growing. Of course, it comes with challenges. What do you think, in your opinion, just 2-3 seconds, we need to do to ensure that this pillar grows? We can't be decreasing over the years, yet we have civil society organizations there trying to fight for the citizens.
Yes, you're right. I think Rwanda governance scorecard points out a decrease in human development, especially to do with education. That indicator that has around 66%.
Yes.
When you go to social protection, that's almost 61%.
Yes, sir.
I think there have been a lot of efforts. We also need to complement government efforts and sit down and see why there has been a decrease in human development. Because when you look at the study that was done by Minicofin and World Bank Group, shows the 6 future drivers of growth. And human capital development is at the center. So when you look at the report of RGS, we really need to put a lot of emphasis. That has to do with school feeding, to do with are we giving the right quality of education?
Yeah.
Because if you're talking about the transformation of this country, then that goes with how we are investing in our human capital.
Absolutely.
So I think it's a call for all the actors, be private sector, be civil society, and even the citizens themselves participating in the whole process. So I think the emphasis should be the quality of how because when you look at the government investments in these programs, the investment is too huge.
Yes, it is.
So we really need to sit down together as partners and see if we are putting the right efforts where the efforts should be. And of course, the media, we've been, all this we have been doing, we have been working with you, but let's reach out to the community and see if there is a decrease, be able to analyze why that decrease, and of course, continue to mobilize our local actors, the civil society, to actually put a lot of emphasis in addressing the issue of malnutrition. Also, there is in health sector. So I think it's time to sit down, to go back, to analyze issues, then and see what is each stakeholder's role in trying to address.
My director tells me we have less than 1 minute, but in less than 1 minute, I want to give you that opportunity to challenge, your platform members or any other person you feel is not working to power. We are moving to 2020. Let's not hold the same discussions we've had over the other decade to this other decade, crossing over. What would you say to them? What would be your challenge to them so that come 2020, we see a vibrant civil society, we see a different part of ways that we were not used to from the platform as well?
I think what we need to do is partnership, to partner all the actors, bringing our efforts together. In most cases, our interventions are scattered, are fragmented. But how do we bring efforts together? And the ministries, by the way, the Ministry of Justice has a best practice which others can emulate of bringing together all their partners. Can we bring all the partners in the same sector, see the challenges that the sector is facing, and now jointly plan, jointly implement, jointly monitor, and jointly address what we get as the gaps. So, and that's what we are saying. But of course, as a civil society, we need to put our efforts together, get coordinated in ensuring that even when the Imihigo is being presented, we should be able to see what has been the role of each partner to achieve the transformation agenda that this country desires to achieve.
And do you have the mandate to remove anyone that's not doing their work right from your platform?
First of all, what we need to do is to advise them. You are doing wrong here. You need to improve here. So it's been about and in most cases, some of them have been losing the membership, not only at the platform, but also at the at umbrellas level. So, and the other thing maybe as we are closing, is the donor community is when you see with the shrinking economies and the budget cuts, as well as the shifting of the donor community priorities.
Yeah.
So we are facing the issue of funding. But how can we partner with private sector? Actually, to partner to generate that funding that can support to achieve the mandate of the civil society, the mandate of serving our citizens, but also how can we partner with government institutions. When you look at legal and policy environment is conducive, but we really need to go beyond that, work together, mobilize funding together, so that civil society can also go to service delivery, can also go to advocacy, but do that in an efficient manner.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, John Bosco, for making time to be with us.
Thank you for having us.
Of course, we've been talking to the Executive Secretary of the Rwanda Civil Society Platform, Mr. John Bosco Nyemazi, and he says the importance of partnerships and collaborations. No man can walk alone, but if you walk together, much more is achieved. My name is Fiona Mbabazi. Do keep it Rwanda Television.